My brother left me his lake house and 2 condos, but what I saw through the window changed everything. I was carrying gifts for my future grandson when I stopped outside my own home. Through the open window, I saw my daughter-in-law unstrapping a fake belly and laughing as she said to my son, "She's so naive. She'll sign the house over to us for the sake of a grandson who doesn't even exist." Welcome, dear listeners. Before I open the door to my story, I ask just one small favor. Please subscribe to the channel, tap the like button, and tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. Your support helps quiet stories like mine finally be heard. Now, let's begin. That July afternoon, the city was suffocating. The asphalt shimmered as if it were melting, releasing the sharp smell of tar that mixed with sweet honeysuckle drifting from somewhere nearby. But I didn't feel the heat. I felt weightless. I'm 64 years old. My name is Ulleia Hightowwer, a retired librarian and pensioner. And until that very day, I believed my life was slowly fading, quietly, obediently, spent fulfilling other people's needs while my own disappeared into the margins. But that afternoon changed everything. Clutched to my chest was a burgundy velvet pouch. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, lay 2 antique silver spoons with enamel handles. I'd bought them from a small vintage shop, spending nearly half my monthly pension. They were for my grandchild. We didn't know yet if it would be a boy or a girl, but I loved that baby already, more than my aching joints, more than my loneliness, more than my pride. For that child, I tolerated my daughter-in-law Verisha's moods and my son Kellen's constant dissatisfaction. But the lightness in my step had nothing to do with the spoons. An hour earlier, I had been sitting in the cool, wood-paneled office of Augusta Sterling, an old family friend and attorney. "And then?" Kellen asked. "We dump her at the lake house. Fresh air will be good for her," she smirked. "And we renovate this place." The velvet pouch in my hand felt like it filled with lead. Something inside me broke, but quietly, no screaming, no tears. Just emptiness. I saw them clearly then, not as family, but as strangers to parasites. Why love was a joke to them, why devotion was currency. I stepped back into the shadow of the archway and breathed deeply. Anger burns too fast, needed ice. I hid the silver spoons deep in my purse. Silver is for the living, for those who deserve a future. These 2 did not. Instead, I bought an expensive bottle of bourbon, the kind my son loved but could never afford. When I unlocked the door, I gave them 10 full seconds to reset their little play. "My darlings," I said brightly, setting the bottle down, "I have news." Their eyes lit up. I told them everything, slowly, the condos, the lake house, the millions. Then I leaned forward and delivered the final line. "There's a condition," I said softly. "The inheritance is released only upon the birth of a direct male blood heir, DNA test required." I smiled, warm, wide, unstoppable. "You're due in 3 months, dear," I said, looking straight at Verisha's flat stomach. "We'll just have to wait for the grandson." The trap snapped shut. I saw it instantly, the flash of terror in their eyes. But they couldn't say a word. They couldn't confess now, not with millions hanging in the balance. They needed a baby. And there was no baby. I rose briskly from the chair, smoothing my skirt. "Well then," I said brightly, "let's celebrate. I'll go slice some lemon. You 2 think about the future." I turned my back on them and walked into the kitchen, feeling the panic thicken behind me like stale smoke. The game had begun to tee the counter. I sliced the lemon with surgical precision, thin, nearly transparent rings. Juice splashed onto a hangnail, and sharp pain pierced my finger. I didn't flinch. That pain was real, alive. Unlike the farce unfolding in my living room. Through the half-open door, their whispers reached me, hissing, frantic, poisonous. "What DNA test?" Verisha whispered, hysteria leaking through her voice. "Kellen, do you understand? This is the end. We have to run. Say it was a miscarriage. Take her apartment, you idiot." Kellen cut her off, greed ringing clearly in his tone, the very greed I was counting on. "What miscarriage? We're talking millions. Condos. If we pull a tragedy now, she'll keep everything or donate it to some ridiculous cat charity we have to stall." "How?" she snapped. "There's no bellied, no baby." "We'll think of something," he growled. "We'll buy a certificate. Borrow a baby for a couple of days, just enough to show the attorney. The main thing is not losing the inheritance. Did you hear her? 2 condos downtown." I smiled at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. The fish hadn't just swallowed the bait. Tea had taken the hook, the line, and the sinker. Greed is the strongest leash of all. I returned with a tray, porcelain cup steaming, lemon arranged in a perfect fan. "Well, my dears," I sang lightly, setting it down. "It's decided. From today on we live differently. The air, the food, the stress, everything matters now. Verisha, sweetheart, you mustn't be upset, I'll take care of everything. From that moment on, their lives became hell, wrapped lovingly in the soft paper of maternal devotion. Began with food. No pizza, no delivery, I declared the next morning, gently removing the phone from Verisha's hand, the delivery app still open. I've been reading Langston's medical encyclopedias. Developing boy needs proper micronutrients. I cooked thick bone broths, beef knuckles simmered 6 hours, no salt. Sodium causes swelling, I explained calmly. The stench of boiled fat seeped into the curtains, the wallpaper, the very walls. Verisha hovered over her bowl, pale, sweating. Ma, I can't, she whimpered. I feel sick. You must, I said gently, pushing the bowl back toward her. You don't want the grandson to be weak, do you? Uncle Langston valued strong heirs. I didn't move until the bowl was empty. She gagged. She swallowed. She cried silently. But she ate, because every spoonful brought her closer to imaginary millions. Kellen tried to intervene and neutralized him just as efficiently. Don't you think your job takes too much time? I asked one evening. Your wife needs support. Carrying such a big boy isn't easy. Ma, we need money, he muttered. Money? I laughed lightly. Bhy? Soon you'll be drowning in it. Quit your job, I'll give you an allowance. Be by her side. Read classics aloud. The child needs to hear his father's voice. Lazy by nature, Kellen resisted for 5 minutes. By morning he'd quit. That was my real strike. With no income they became dependent. Every cigarette, every lipstick, every bus fare required my approval. Kellen, darling, $20? I sighed, handing it over. Bring the receipt, I'm keeping records for the attorney. They lived in a golden cage. Verisha tried to sneak out once. I blocked the door. No friends. There's a flu epidemic. You want to risk the inheritance. For 2 weeks, I suffocated them with care, saw the hatred in their eyes. The clenched jaws as I adjusted pillows, forced Tolstoy readings, monitored every breath. Then I brought home the bag, a huge fabric sack. What's that? Verisha asked sharply. I spilled the contents across the table. Flannel in pale yellow, grassy green, milky white. Lace, ribbons, thread. No synthetics, I announced. Only natural cotton, so everything myself. Diapers, bonnets, onesies. Verisha stiffened. Stand up, dear, I said, taking out my measuring tape. Why? I need accurate growth dynamics. She stood reluctantly. Lift your shirt. Her face drained of color. I didn't insist, yet I measured carefully, tightening the tape where the fake belly began, jotting notes. Then I pressed fabric against her stomach, pins in hand. The first pin sank into foam. She didn't react. I repinned. Again foam. Then by accident the pin struck flesh. Ouch, she screamed. Oh, forgive me, I gasped. These hands, old age. She swallowed her anger. I pressed my palm against her belly, harder this time. No warmth, no movement. Only rigid artificial resistance. Strange, I murmured. So hard today, no kicking at all. Are you sure he's comfortable? Silence. Her fear vibrated through the lie. Later from the hallway, I heard it. We need a baby, Verisha hissed. Urgently. Find one, Kellen snapped. Buy a certificate. There are forums. We'll show it to the attorney, get the papers, then give it back or say it died. I don't care. That was when the last ember of pity died inside me. An hour later, I returned calm, unstoppable. I've been thinking, I said, setting tea before Kellen. Your clinic is dreadful. I pulled your file. You had no right. Verisha screamed. He's incompetent, I cut in. I've arranged something better. Professor Sterling, best obstetric geneticist in the state. Old school. Very strict. I'm not going anywhere, she shrieked. No choice, I replied evenly. No medical certification, no inheritance. They fell silent. And since you're unwell, I added pleasantly, I arranged a house call. He'll come himself, I said quietly. Yes, any minute now, my daughter-in-law whispered. Then tidy yourselves up, I added calmly. It should smell of cleanliness in here, not fear. For the next half hour, panic flooded the apartment like a fire in a chicken coop. Kellen tore through the rooms with a vacuum cleaner. Verisha dug frantically through the closet, searching for something light enough to hide the contraption on her stomach without making her sweat, sat in my armchair with a book open on my lap, not turning a single page, listening to their terror thicken the AIRT. Exactly 7 o'clock. The doorbell rang, sharp and commanding. Kellen froze mid-step. Verisha sank into The sofa cushions, yanking the blanket up to her nose. Open it, Kellen, I said evenly. Our future has arrived. I went into the hallway myself. On the threshold stood a tall, broad-shouldered man in an impeccable grey suit, a leather doctor's bag in his hand. His silver hair was slicked back, horn-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. T was Augustus Sterling, my attorney, yet stripped of warmth. His face was stone, his gaze merciless. Oh, them, he was a stranger. Good evening, he rumbled. Where's the patient? I don't have much time. This way, Professor, I said, helping him off with his coat. And the living room. He didn't offer handshakes. He set the bag on the table and snapped it open. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Well then, he said, pulling out a thick folder and a gold-nibbed pen. Complaints? Nausea, swelling, back pain, Verisha babbled. Expected, he replied dryly, writing. No home examination. That would be unprofessional. Tomorrow I'll issue a referral to my clinic. He lifted his gaze. But first, genetic markers. Mandatory for succession rights. Kellen swallowed. Of course. Blood type. A positive, Verisha whispered. Abortions? Miscarriages? No, she snapped too fast. First pregnancy, completely healthy. Augustus stopped writing. He removed a printed sheet from the folder. Silence thickened. Like cats, you said? He asked calmly. Interesting. What's interesting? Kellen croaked. I have access to the Federal Medical Database, Augustus said. I always check beforehand. He held up the paper. Verisha Jenkins. 5 years ago. City General Hospital, Detroit. Her mouth opened, no sound came out. Emergency hysterectomy, he continued evenly. Complete removal of the uterus due to fibroid complications. He studied her rounded belly like an insect under glass. Explain the miracle, he said. Am I mistaken, or are you a medical phenomenon worthy of a Nobel Prize? Kellen turned grey. What is he saying? Verisha clutched her fake belly as if it might save her. Error, she screamed suddenly. Fraud. I lost my passport. Criminals used my data. Her fear was real, but not fear of prison. Fear of losing the prize. Kellen clung to hope. Right, Ma? We feel him kicking. Of course, I said calmly, placing a hand on Augustus's shoulder. Databases make mistakes. Stress is bad for the baby. Augustus closed the folder. Fine, he said coldly. But before the birth, I will personally examine her. Genetics doesn't tolerate lies. He left. That night, they whispered until dawn. They planned a tragedy, a premature birth, a remote trip, a dead baby, and a grieving grandmother who would sign over at least one apartment for consolation. In the morning, they came to breakfast like martyrs. The city is killing Verisha, Kellen said nervously. We found a retreat. Forest births at Eco Clinic. That sounds expensive, I said mildly. 20,000 a month, he exhaled. We don't have it. Of course, I said warmly. What is money compared to a grandson's life? I reached for my checkbook. Their eyes burned into my back. What's the place called? I asked. Just write it to cash, Verisha said quickly. No, I smiled. Order matters. I wrote, signed, and handed the check to Kellen. His smile vanished. Ma, this says State Psychiatric Hospital. Closed ward. Verisha screamed. I'm pregnant, not insane. Really? I asked gently. You were hysterical yesterday. Phantom pains are common. Kellen slammed the check down. Enough. Give us real money. Leave. I asked quietly. Running from what? I placed a photograph on the table. 10 years old. Verisha, young, glowing, hugging a balding man, and unmistakably pregnant. Her lips trembled. Where did you get that? You look fertile, I said calmly. Where is that baby, Verisha? Kellen stared. You said I was your first. She's lying. Verisha screamed, but she was cornered. I picked up the check and tore it in half. I'm only protecting the purity of the experiment, I said calmly. No trips. The birth will happen here, under my supervision. I blew the scraps of the torn check from my palm toward them. And now eat your oatmeal, it's getting cold. The oatmeal had already turned gray and gluey. No one touched it. Verisha stood up. There was no weakness in her movements now, no clumsy imitation of pregnancy. She moved like a coiled spring. She grabbed Kellen by the elbow, hard, possessive, her manicured nails digging into his sleeve. To the bedroom, she hissed. Now. The door slammed. The old walls didn't mute the sound. They amplified it. I stayed in the kitchen, slowly finishing my tea, listening as their fantasy world collapsed. You useless rag. Verisha screamed. She's mocking us. She knows everything, especially that photo. Lower your voice, Kellen muttered. We're so close. To hell with close, she snapped. I want guarantees. Today. I heard the words clearly. This apartment. Make her sign it over now. Tell her I'm leaving. Tell her I'll get an abortion if she doesn't. A minute later, the door flew open. Kellen stormed out. I had never seen my son like that. Twisted by fear, humiliated, furious, he ripped the towel from my hands and threw it to the floor. Enough, he shouted, voice cracking. Sign the apartment over today, or you'll never see your grandson. He leaned over me, breath sharp, smelling of sweat and panic. You'll die here alone. I looked at him. Not a man, just a frightened boy breaking toys because he never learned how to play. Fine, I said quietly. You want the apartment? Right now? Yes. I'll agree, I nodded. But prove you're ready to sacrifice. For what? A buyout, I said. Cash. I don't have money. You have a car, a watch, a console, a laptop, vinyls. Sell everything. Are you insane? If Verisha matters more than your toys, I cut in, you'll do it. Bring the money by Friday. He failed the test. For 3 days, he sold his life piece by piece. Electronics. The car. The watch. Everything, at humiliating prices. On Friday evening, he returned looking 10 years older. He threw an envelope on the table. 15,000, he muttered. That's it. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. The price of your comfort, I said softly. I'll get my glasses, I added, turning away. Too many counterfeits these days. My hands moved fast. The real money slid into my apron pocket. The fake bills, perfectly stacked, replaced it. I walked to the fireplace. It's just paper, I said. It burns. Before they understood, I opened my fingers. The money fell into the fire. Kellen screamed. He dropped to his knees, clawing at the flames, burning his hands as the paper vanished into ash. My car, my money, he howled. I stood over him, calm. Money is dust, Kellen. Trust is harder to earn. You failed. Verisha didn't hesitate. She grabbed her phone. Police, she screamed. She's insane. She's threatening me. I'm pregnant. I sat down calmly, picked up my knitting and began to stitch. Knit, purl. Loop by loop. I had 10 minutes. The door shook. Police. Verisha transformed instantly, hair disheveled, arm scratched red, voice breaking as she clutched her belly. 2 officers rushed in. Where's the knife? One demanded. She hid it. Verisha sobbed. She burned the money and locked us in. The room looked convincing. Ash, chaos, a broken man on the floor. Ma'am, the sergeant said, approaching me. Hands where we can see them. I looked up over my glasses. Good evening, officers, I said softly. Forgive the mess. Family drama. She's a maniac. Verisha shrieked. I'm losing the baby. Call an ambulance, the officer said. No. Verisha shouted too fast. That's when doubt flickered. I stood slowly and my hand, a long knitting needle. Just a needle, I said gently. I'm knitting a bonnet. I stepped toward Verisha. I've been waiting for my grandson for a very long time. I do everything for them. I feed them, I pour their drinks, I wipe dust no one else even sees. And Verisha, she is very tired. I walked straight toward her. She backed away until her spine hit the china cabinet. Don't come near me, she shrieked. Get her away. She's confused, Lieutenant, I said calmly, never taking my eyes off her stomach. There's a condition, phantom pregnancy. When a woman wants money, excuse me, a baby, so badly, she feels it exists. But there's nothing there. What nonsense are you talking? Verisha hissed, eyes darting. I turned to the officers, inviting them to look. You're experienced men. Tell me, does a real belly bounce like that? Before anyone could react, I moved. Fast. Precise. Like a fencer. No. Kellen shouted, scrambling up. Too late. I didn't stab her. I barely touched the fabric, just the tip of the needle, dead center. Pop. A sharp crack, like a toy gun. Then a long, pitiful hiss. Air escaping. Verisha squealed and clutched her stomach. There was nothing to hold. The bulge collapsed beneath her fingers. The tunic sagged. The miracle melted. Silence fell, absolute, ringing. 2 officers stood frozen, mouths open, watching the pregnancy deflate into a limp sheet of rubber. The beat cop rubbed his nose, hiding a smirk. Verisha pressed against the cabinet. Her face blotched red. She looked down. Then at me. Then at the police. For 1 second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. You see, I sighed, returning the needle to my basket. False pregnancy. Inflatable. I looked at the officers with grave concern. She doesn't need a lawyer. She needs a psychiatrist. She wore a balloon and demanded millions. Kellen slid down the wall, covering his face, whimpering. The air had gone out of the baby, and out of Verisha's power. Ma'am, the beat cop said finally. What exactly is going on here? False call, I corrected gently. A cry for help. He warned her once, shut his folder, and left. The door slammed. The silence afterward wasn't peace, was the silence before detonation. Verisha tore the deflated belly off herself and hurled it to the floor. I hate you, you old hag, she screamed. Kellen tried. She kicked him. I only tolerated you for the money, she spat. You were just a wallet I couldn't open. But the baby, he whispered. We wanted a family. She laughed. A laugh colder than a scream. I'd rather die than give birth for you. I stood by the window, arms crossed, watching like a nature documentary. Hyenas, cornered. Mom, Kellen whispered. You knew. I knew about you, I said. A mother sees through walls. Foam too. You let me sell everything. I gave you choices. Every day. You chose greed. Verisha lunged for the cabinet, grabbing antiques. I'm not leaving empty-handed. That's when I whistled. Sharp. Piercing. The front door flew open. 2 movers stepped inside, huge, silent. Evening, one rumbled. Just stand there, I said. Make sure nothing leaves. Verisha froze. Cornered. She handed me the bag. Sit, I said. Both of you. I paced slowly. You wanted the inheritance. Yes, she spat. You wouldn't have gotten it. I pulled out a folded document. Your uncle had assets, and debts. More debts than assets. Silence. Accepting the inheritance meant bankruptcy. I placed the paper on the table. I waved it 2 weeks ago. Kellen stared at me, mouth working soundlessly. So we chased, nothing? You chased a ghost, I said. You destroyed everything for 0. Verisha slid off the chair. That's impossible, she whispered. The internet lies, I said softly. Just like you. Kellen howled. Not the cry of a loser, but of a man who realized the game never existed. I'm left with nothing, he cried. Mom, how could you? I wanted to tell you, I answered coldly. That very day when I walked home with the spoons, I planned to explain everything. The debts, the joke, laugh together, drink tea. But I stopped by the window. I saw you laughing. Calling me a sheep. And then I decided, the sheep should teach the wolves a lesson. I nodded to the movers. Now get out. Verisha lifted her head. Out of my apartment, I said. Both of you. Right now. Mom, I have nowhere to go.
Kalan screaming.
I sold everything. I don't even have money for a hostel. You have a healthy, non-pregnant wife, I replied, pointing at Verisha. And working hands. Go clean floors. Carry boxes. My house is not a shelter for parasites. Take them out, I told the men. The bearded mover stepped toward Kalen. The other toward Verisha. I'm registered here. Kalen shrieked, clinging to the chair. You deregistered a month ago, I said calmly, pulling out the paper. You signed without reading, remember? For benefits for the grandson. You're nobody here, I added. A guest who stayed too long. They dragged them out.
Kalan sohbet.
Verisha snarled and tried to bite. Their screams echoed down the stairwell. Doors opened. Then the entrance slammed shut. Silence. The apartment smelled of ash, cheap perfume, and heart medicine. But the air felt clean. I walked to the table, took the inheritance waiver, a simple printout, fake stamp, Photoshop job, and tore it into pieces. The scraps fell into the ash. A lie for salvation is a sin. A lie for justice is a weapon. Today, I fired point blank. No time for sentimentality. I went into the bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out Kalen's old summer camp suitcase. I threw in what remained of his life: shirts, sweaters, socks.
No folding.
No care. With every tossed item, my chest felt lighter. I zipped the suitcase. It was light. Just like his life. I opened the door. Kalen sat on the step, clutching his head. Alone. Verisha was gone. Predators don't linger where there's nothing to feed on. "Mom," he sobbed, grabbing for me. I stepped back, lifting the suitcase like a shield. "She bewitched me," he cried. "I love you. I have nowhere to go." "Bewitched?" I asked quietly.
No, Kalan.
"She offered you what you wanted, easy money. You followed willingly. You are not a victim. You are an accomplice." I set the suitcase at his feet. "You laughed at me. You planned to strip me bare while I was alive." "Those were just words," he pleaded. "No," I shook my head. "They were actions." "You are not my son anymore," I said. "You are a thief. And I do not live with thieves." "Where am I supposed to go?" he yelled. "Adult life is big," I replied. "Go anywhere." I closed the door, turned both locks, put on the chain. One tear fell. I wiped it away. The past was over. The present had begun. A week later, I sat in the attorney's office. Windows open. Summer wind. "Option B?" he asked. "Yes." "No debts," he confirmed. "Estate value, 70 million. Condos. Accounts. Country residence. All mine." "I'll keep the condos," I said. "Rent them out. The cabin, donate it. A summer camp for orphans." "And your son?" "Nothing," I said. "I gave him freedom. And the necessity to become a man." I signed. Stamped. Done. Outside, the sun flooded the street. I breathed deeply. I am Ulleia Hightowwer. 64. Former sheep. Current mistress of my own life. And life is just beginning.